Hey, it's Ray from Sober Without God, and today on the channel we're going to talk about why it's so hard to change our minds about alcohol. And on Sober Without God, we usually talk about deconstructing from the religion, and we also talk about being alcohol free. And yeah, we are going to tackle today's question of why it's so hard for some people to change their minds about alcohol. I know with me, it took me 20 years to change my mind about alcohol. I drank and drank and drank, and sometimes I would quit, but then I would come right back to it. And it's a struggle like that for a lot of people. Some people don't have a problem. They can pick up one drink and not pick up a drink for a long time, and they don't have a problem. They can do what's called social drinking, but not me, and not a lot of other people. A lot of other people just have a serious alcohol use disorder problem. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to focus on those of us who have a very serious time with alcohol and why it's so hard for us to change our minds about our alcohol and our drinking problem. So let's dig into that a little bit today. And before I start, I'm going to tell you that everything I talk about comes from my own point of view and what I've experienced. And I am not uh, a medical expert when it comes to alcohol use disorder. And if you have a problem, reach out to some of the links below or talk to your medical health care provider about your alcohol use disorder. They will be the ones you need to talk to about your alcohol use disorder. And so, the first reason that we have trouble with our alcohol use disorder is it's habit forming. And we all know that. This is no surprise. It's habit forming. You know, we pick up a drink of alcohol and we get that initial endorphin rush, and then we get drunk or we get really loose and we get really excited, and it brings us all the way back down and we have a crash, and the next thing we know, we start thinking about that next drink, and then we anticipate that next drink, and then we get to the next drink, and then we're all through that cycle once again, and we create that cycle over and over again. And there's a great book called Atomic Habits. If you've never read it, habit formation is not just about you picking up a drink, you drinking, you getting drunk, and then you waiting for the next drink. It's something that happens within the brain, and habits are about cycle formation in the brain. And it's important to understand the cycles that happen within your brain when you drink and your anticipation of the next drink and the triggers that make it happen for you. And it's a chemical imbalance and it's brain pathways and it's all those things that happen inside your brain that you have to overcome, and you need to overpower, and you need to make new habits to replace the old habits. And I remember when I drank, it felt like there was something inside me that I could not help but drive into that liquor store parking lot to go get a drink after work. I felt powerless to avoid doing that. And that was part of that pathway that was built into my brain, especially during COVID. I just felt like it was that thing I had to do to get through COVID, or to get through my alcohol use disorder, or to have a day after work where I did that. It's habit forming. And I want to thank you for being here today at Sober Without God. If you could leave a like for me, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And I want to tell you, also starting this Saturday, I have a surprise coming up for you. I'll tell you more about it in the next video, but I am starting a book review on this channel, and it's kind of silly. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'll tell you more about it next week. The next reason that it's so hard to change our minds about alcohol is that alcohol produces pleasure in its own way. It produces a lot of pleasure. There's a release of dopamine when we have alcohol. It actually releases dopamine in your brain. When you go and you have alcohol, you have a drink of any kind that contains alcohol in it, it releases a pleasure bomb in your brain. And if you've had a long day at work or you've had a long day at home and you've gone through some difficult times, your brain just explodes with energy, and you're happy to get it, and you're like, "Oh man, I needed that." Or if you want to reward yourself, or you've done something good in your life, or maybe you're the kind of person who's like, man, I got to have alcohol in order to sleep. Then you drink that and it makes you drowsy and you fall asleep, and that dopamine hits and it produces pleasure for you. Now, there's a flip side to that, in that the more you drink, the more it takes to keep getting that pleasure over and over again. So you need more of that ethanol, more of that those toxic chemicals to reduce that, to keep increasing that pleasure as you drink. And also, if you were like me and if you were thinking, well, I've got to have alcohol to drink, well, alcohol actually messes up your sleep cycle worse than you know. And if you couple the alcohol drinking with the people and the places and the triggers and all those around you, then you're creating a toxic combination of things that just makes the whole alcohol experience worse. So I was coupling sleep with alcohol, and I thought I had to have alcohol to sleep. So that just made that habit forming that we talked about a minute ago even worse than it possibly should have been before. So those are two things: habit forming, and it produces pleasure. And the final thing is something we've talked about here before, and it's no surprise to you. It's self-medication. It's self-medication. Whether a lot of people drink because they're in physical pain and they don't want to, they're like, I don't want to take, Lortabs, and I don't want to take the pills the doctor gave me, so I'll just drink a few beers and my knee will feel better, my back will feel better. Sometimes that self-medication is for emotional pain, and they want to feel better emotionally, so they throw back a few whiskeys and they think they're going to feel better emotionally. And alcohol slows down your amygdala. Your amygdala is like a little pea-sized thing in your brain that slows down your fight or flight response, and your trauma center doesn't have to work so hard. And it works for a short amount of time, but after a while, it doesn't. What it does is it lowers your inhibition. So alcohol does have a temporary place where you just kind of sizzle out and you're free from that trauma response, and it does self-medicate you. But over a long period of time, it does lower your inhibitions, and it does more harm than it does good. And so it begins to destroy your brain, and all those chemicals begin to seep in and begin to destroy parts of your brain that you really need to have for life. I thought alcohol, I was using alcohol. I mean, there's a reason, well, maybe, but there's a reason that they have alcohol inside a drugstore, inside a Walgreens or a Rite Aid. I mean, it's a drug. It literally is America's best selling drug, and it repressed, I thought it was repressing my stress and my anxiety, and it was, but it was actually making it worse. And when I stopped drinking, I had to confront all that stress and pain and anxiety when I got done, because I had to sit there out in the open with it, and I had to confront and face it all. If I can give you a final illustration to think about why it's so hard in life to change your mind about alcohol, think about it like this. If you've ever been in a fog, a real fog, like standing outside in a field where it's foggy, or if you've stood on a street or a bus stop or a corner and there's fog all around you, but in the area where you're standing, there's no fog, right? So for 30 or 40 feet, you'll look around and you're like, well, there's no fog right here. I can see fog 30 feet down the road, but there's no fog where I'm standing. And I can't see the buildings over there, or I can't see the barn, or I can't see the cars over there, but I can see around me for a distance. That's what it's like to have alcohol use disorder. It seems okay where you are, but all the people around you can't see you because you have a problem. You're the one with the problem. You are actually in a fog, but it doesn't feel like you're in a fog. That's what it's like to have alcohol use disorder. You are completely and totally unaware and have talked yourself into a position where you think you don't have a problem, but you do. you are in a fog. A couple of videos ago, I talked about an alcohol use disorder test that you can take from the World Health Organization or from the CDC to test yourself to see whether you have an alcohol use disorder. I strongly encourage you to take that test because it will be a big help to you in just getting on the path to find out whether you have a problem or not. And if you do have a problem, reach out to places like Reframe, reach out to your primary care healthcare provider, reach out to me, reach out to anybody has suffered from alcohol use disorder and get on the right track and get some help and, and get free of alcohol use disorder because it is no good. And next time we are going to talk about what it is and why it's so hard to break